What makes this moment so striking is not just the outcome of the ruling, but the way it arrived. This decision did not unfold through the long, familiar rhythm people expect from the highest court in the land. There was no extended period for the public to digest arguments, no gradual signaling of where the court might land. Instead, it came swiftly, decisively, and under the banner of emergency. That speed alone changed the national mood, because when a ruling of this magnitude is issued so quickly, it reshapes reality before most people even realize what has happened. Overnight, legal assumptions that felt stable for years were suddenly no longer guaranteed, and policies affecting millions were altered before the country could collectively catch its breath. Emergency rulings are meant to be rare tools, reserved for moments when delay itself could cause irreparable harm. Yet this ruling has forced many to ask whether the definition of emergency is quietly expanding. When extraordinary authority is exercised at extraordinary speed, the balance between necessity and caution becomes fragile. The court's narrow majority underscores this tension. A single vote can now determine outcomes that ripple across states, industries, and households, raising concerns about how much weight such fast-moving decisions should carry when their consequences are so widespread and long-lasting. The immediacy of the ruling meant that there was no buffer period for adjustment. Agencies, institutions, and local governments were required to respond in real time, often without clear guidance on how the decision would play out in practice. This created a domino effect, where one sudden change triggered a cascade of legal and administrative shifts. For many Americans, the law did not slowly evolve, it abruptly changed direction. That sense of legal whiplash has become one of the most defining features of this moment, leaving people wondering whether stability in constitutional interpretation is being replaced by responsiveness driven by urgency. Supporters of the ruling argue that this is exactly how the system should work when time is critical. They believe decisive action prevents chaos and restores boundaries that may have been stretched too far. From this perspective, speed is not recklessness but responsibility, and hesitation could have allowed deeper harm to take root. They see the emergency process as a safeguard, not a shortcut designed to protect constitutional principles when normal timelines are inadequate. In their view, the ruling demonstrates strength, clarity, and a willingness to act when the stakes are high. Yet critics see something very different. They worry that repeated reliance on emergency authority risks normalizing a process that bypasses deeper scrutiny. When decisions with massive consequences are made without the full weight of deliberation, it can erode public trust, even among those who might agree with the outcome. The concern is not only about what was decided, but about how it was decided. If speed becomes the standard rather than the exception, then the foundational promise of careful, reasoned judgment begins to feel uncertain. This tension reflects a broader national conversation about power and restraint. The court occupies a unique position, insulated from political cycles yet deeply influential over them. When it moves quickly, the country moves with it, often without debate or preparation. That reality places enormous responsibility on emergency rulings because they do not just resolve disputes, they redefine expectations. People begin to ask whether tomorrow's rights and obligations might also shift suddenly depending on how urgency is interpreted. Another striking aspect of this ruling is how it blurred the line between temporary action and lasting precedent. Emergency decisions are often framed as limited, addressing immediate concerns rather than setting permanent rules. But in practice, these rulings can shape future cases, guiding how similar issues are handled down the road. What begins as a temporary measure can quietly influence long-term legal direction. This possibility has intensified scrutiny as observers question whether a moment of urgency is now steering the constitutional compass. The narrow split in the decision amplifies these concerns. A close vote suggests deep disagreement over both the legal reasoning and the necessity of acting so quickly. When such division exists, the resulting ruling can feel less like a settled conclusion and more like a fragile turning point for the public. This creates uncertainty about how durable the decision truly is and whether future challenges might reverse or reshape it. Stability in the law depends not just on authority but on confidence. And confidence is harder to maintain when outcomes hinge on the slimmest of margins. At the same time, this moment reveals how interconnected the legal system has become with everyday life. An emergency ruling is not an abstract concept confined to courtrooms. It has immediate consequences for workplaces, communities, and families. Policies change, obligations shift, and expectations are reset almost instantly. The speed that defines emergency action also accelerates its impact, compressing what might have unfolded over years into a matter of days or even hours. Ultimately, this ruling has forced the nation to confront a difficult question. How much sudden change is too much, even in the name of necessity? The answer is not simple, and it lies at the intersection of law, trust, and democratic stability. Emergency authority can protect, but it can also unsettle, It can resolve crises, but it can also create new uncertainties. As this decision continues to shape the legal landscape, it serves as a reminder that when the highest court moves quickly, the entire country feels the ground shift beneath its feet. What followed this ruling was not a pause for reflection, but an immediate wave of uncertainty that reached straight into the lives of millions. Laws do not exist in isolation. And when they change suddenly, people feel it first in their routines, their plans, and their sense of security. Families woke up unsure whether the protections they relied on the day before still applied. Workers questioned how new rules might affect their jobs. Institutions scrambled to interpret what the decision meant in real terms. The law had shifted, but clarity had not arrived with it, and that gap between change and understanding became the space where anxiety grew. For many, the most unsettling part was how quickly the ground moved beneath them. There was no gradual transition, no period of adjustment, no time to prepare. One day, the rules were familiar. The next, they were different. Compliance became an urgent demand rather than a planned process. This suddenness magnified the human cost of the decision, because uncertainty does not remain abstract for long. It turns into postponed decisions, delayed investments, altered careers, and families forced to rethink futures they thought were stable. Communities across the country felt this disruption in different ways, depending on where they lived and how local systems responded. Some states moved swiftly to RC, the new reality, while others hesitated, unsure of the boundaries or concerned about legal challenges still to come. This uneven response deepened confusion, creating a patchwork of interpretation that left people wondering which rules applied to them. The same ruling, intended to bring resolution, instead highlighted how fragmented the experience of justice can become when clarity lags behind authority. At the center of this uncertainty is a deeper conflict between law and lived experience. Legal language may be precise, but life rarely is. When rulings take effect immediately, they often collide with real-world complexity. Employers must adjust policies, agencies must rewrite guidance, and individuals must adapt without clear instructions. The burden of interpretation shifts downward, landing on people who were never meant to carry it. That shift can feel like abandonment, as if the responsibility to navigate legal change has been transferred from institutions to individuals overnight. Supporters of the ruling argue that discomfort is an unavoidable byproduct of correction. They believe that when the law has drifted from its proper boundaries, restoring balance will inevitably cause disruption. From this perspective, uncertainty is temporary, and clarity will emerge as the system adjusts. They see the ruling as a necessary step to reassert principles that were weakened over time, even if the short-term impact feels harsh. In their view, long-term stability justifies short-term upheaval. But for those living through the consequence, the distinction between short-term and long-term can feel meaningless. When livelihoods, benefits, or rights are in question, waiting for stability is not an abstract exercise. It is a daily struggle. Critics argue that the ruling exposes a disconnect between legal reasoning and human reality, where the speed of enforcement outpaces the capacity of people to adapt. They warn that when millions are affected at once, uncertainty itself becomes a form of harm, eroding trust in institutions meant to provide protection and fairness. This moment has also intensified a broader national debate about whose interests are prioritized when emergency decisions are made. When rulings take effect immediately, those with resources and legal support can adapt more quickly, while those without are left vulnerable. The result is an uneven distribution of impact, where the most affected are often the least equipped to respond. That imbalance raises uncomfortable questions about equity and access, and whether emergency authority unintentionally amplifies existing divides. As uncertainty spread, so did tension. Conversations in workplaces, homes, and public spaces became charged with confusion and fear. People searched for answers that were slow to arrive, relying on fragments of information and conflicting interpretations. This atmosphere made it harder to find common ground, because uncertainty breeds suspicion. When the rules are unclear, trust weakens, and speculation fills the void. The ruling did not just change policies, it altered the emotional climate of the nation. Yet within this disruption lies an opportunity for reflection. Moments like this force a society to examine how decisions are made and who bears their consequences. They challenge assumptions about stability and reveal the fragile connections between law and everyday life. When millions are caught between shifting rules and unanswered questions, the importance of transparency, communication, and compassion becomes impossible to ignore. Ultimately, this ruling has shown that the true impact of a legal decision is measured not only by its constitutional logic, but by its human cost. Laws may be written in formal language, but they are lived in real time by real people. When change arrives without warning, it leaves more than confusion in its wake. It leaves a sense of vulnerability that lingers long after the legal arguments fade from view.